Good morning. Welcome. We'll get started soon. If you've got questions, go ahead and start typing them into the chat window, and we'll get started. All right. Here we are. Get the camera working. All right. Hey, how you doing? Welcome. Hey, Night Cow, good to see you. Love it. Hey, how did you find me? I'm wondering, where did you figure out to come here today? Go ahead and write that in the chat. That'd be good to see how you guys heard about me. And do you have any questions? You need to focus on portfolio. Yeah. So are you like a storyboard artist? Are you an animator? Find you on LinkedIn from a job search. Oh, cool. Awesome. It's really cool. I love LinkedIn. 3D animator. Awesome. So you just need to work on your portfolio. Do you know where you are in the process of it's where if you heard me talk about, like, you have bouncing ball where you're learning spacing and timing, and then you've got maybe working on something with a tail where you have overlap, then you got body mechanics where you're working on balance of the body, and then there's acting and lip sync. Like, kind of where are you in that path? And while I'm waiting for answers, I might as well just do some bouncing ball stuff. Let's get this to where you guys can see it. Start the ball there. So yeah, as you have questions, shout them out. Let me know what your questions are, and if you see that I'm ignoring you and maybe you had a question and you want my attention, there should be underneath the stream. Underneath the stream, there's some sound effects that you can do. There's like a duck quack, a horn, I think. Sound off one of those, and hopefully that'll get my attention. Yeah. So. Here I've mixed it all, to be honest, but most of my old reel had it all mixed into examples of all 12 principles. That's awesome. That's good. A lot of times a reel that just shows exercises like the bouncing ball and stuff like that is probably not enough to get you a job. You want to get to the point where you have a lot of acting and body mechanics in your reel. So as you progress, maybe you do a shot that looks a lot better, you need to start taking old stuff off, right? So pretty soon your reel, I'd rather see a short reel, maybe that just has 2 shots on it, but the 2 shots are really good. I'd rather see that than a minute long reel of exercises that someone did. You know what I mean? You can always have those exercises for later. Like, maybe you show those 2 shots to someone and they're like, yeah, I really like what you can do. And maybe they ask to see some of your exercises. Then you can show those to them. But yeah, definitely a reel that has just exercises, and what I mean by exercises is like the bouncing ball, maybe a walk cycle. If that's all it has, it looks like these are assignments you did for a class. That's usually not going to get you a job. So, and that's usually why I tell students too, don't worry about your reel as you're going to class and you're doing these assignments. A lot of times in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, I need to make this look awesome for my reel. And then you're putting too much pressure on yourself. Don't worry about your reel yet. You got to learn the basics, get that on your, or get that in your head, that's, you're learning these skills so that you can apply it to future shots, right? And so don't worry about how does my reel look right now, or this is going to go on my reel. Don't even think about that while you're working on assignments. There are some people that progress enough so that by the time they get to the acting shots, that those shots do end up on a reel that can get them jobs, which is really good. Other people, those acting shots that they do in school, they're not good enough yet, but that's fine. Like, you got to start somewhere, right? It's kind of like you're still learning with the training wheels on, and now you got to keep practicing so that you can take the training wheels off, and then you're good enough. Your reel will be good enough to get a job. But I think that's an important point for you guys to know, to go back and keep looking at your reel and cutting out the worst shot, right? So replace it. Bring in, so you have a new shot that you think is pretty good, put it in your reel, take out an old one. A reel doesn't have to be more than a minute long, to be honest, because you got to think about it. Recruiters and people are just, the people that are doing the hiring are going through so many reels, they're only going to watch the first couple seconds, most likely, unless you grab their attention at the beginning, and then they'll watch more, right? But a minute is plenty of time. It should be plenty of time to show what you can do. So if you have to edit, maybe some of your shots are too long and you have to edit those down for a reel, do that. I would not make a reel more than 2 minutes. I think shoot for a minute and maybe minute and a half, no more than 2 minutes, and you're golden. So I think there's less pressure there. You don't have to have so many shots, ready for your reel. So let me see what else we got. You have 3 minutes, okay? Past 2 years ago, just looking for work. Yeah, okay, that's awesome. So first time chatter, was that Shareloom? Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. Night Cow says, would you take a look at my old one too? Yeah, if any of you guys want to send me stuff to look at, it's only if I have time. I can't promise anything if it's too much. Definitely bouncing ball stuff I want to help people with. I try to prioritize that, but if you have other shots and things you want me to look at, you can send it to me like on any of the social media that you're friends with me on. Just private message me a link. The best way to send me stuff is to give me a sync sketch, like upload it to Sync Sketch, and then send me a link. Because then on Sync Sketch, I can frame by frame it. I can write in notes. I can do drawovers, stuff like that. On some occasions, I might ask for you to send me a Maya file so I can kind of look under the hood of what you're doing and kind of get in the graph editor and stuff. So, and if I ever ask you to do that, I'll usually set up a Google folder for you where you can just upload it. But first things first, just send me a private message. Say, hey, can I send this to you? Send me a Sync Sketch link, and then hopefully I'll have time. If you don't hear from me in a while, just reach out to me again and say, hey, just a reminder, hey, do you have time? That's fine. Just remind me, and hopefully I try to take time to do that every once in a while. So let's see what else we got. All right, you'll send it on LinkedIn. Awesome. So Shareloom, I'm sorry if I butcher names. Shareloom. Tom, I was the one that sent a DM on Twitter about me starting Animation Mentor. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, and I love Animation Mentor, guys. They don't give me any kickbacks for promoting them. That's where I went to school. I love it. It was amazing. And from what I hear about other schools, I feel like I was set up more than what I've heard from people who've gone to other schools. One of the great things about Animation Mentor, and maybe other schools are starting to do this now, is they really teach you how to give and receive feedback. And I think that helps you grow a lot more. Is if you like you're just starting out and you're like, well, I can't give anybody feedback. Well, you'd be surprised. Like anybody can watch animation and kind of have some ideas of how it could be better, or if you might see something that looks wrong. It's like, hey, just in this section, something doesn't look right. Maybe you don't know what it is, but you can at least say, hey, you might want to look at, these frames, this section, because something doesn't look right. I don't know what it is. And even that's helpful, right? But don't give unsolicited feedback. If somebody didn't ask for feedback, don't give it to them. Maybe you can say, hey, do you mind me giving you some feedback on your shot? And then they'll say yes, or no. No, I don't mind. Yes, you can do it. But at Animation Mentor, they have it set up where everybody has to give feedback to like 3 people each week. It's either 3 or 5, I can't remember. But so it's part of your assignment is to give feedback to other people, right? And so then you're getting feedback from other people and you're giving feedback. And you really start to train your eye to see, because you're looking for things that are wrong. A lot of times when you're just watching TV, a lot of times, you're watching animation, you're not always, you're being entertained. You're not always looking, some people are, you're not always looking for what's wrong. But in this instance, you would be not just looking at someone's animation to be entertained, but you're looking to see, how can this be better? Is there anything that stands out, that doesn't look right? And then that's the feedback you give them. And then you also start to learn how to communicate in a way that's clear. So, you're typing out your feedback to them. You have to think about, how can I say this in a way that's not confusing, right? And it takes a little while of you giving feedback for you to learn kind of some easier ways to communicate and stuff like that. But you'll get better. And it'll help you as an animator, because then you look at your work and you'll start to spot those same problems. And I've always said, like, giving feedback, it's kind of like group therapy. People that are in group therapy, the reason for group therapy is it's easier to see problems in other people than it is to see a problem in yourself, right? We're kind of blind to what's happening in our own life. But now all of a sudden you're with someone else that has the same type of problem, and you hear them talk and you're like, okay, here's the issue, right? And you can give that person advice, but then now from giving that person advice, you just learned something about yourself, right? And so that's what giving feedback is, and that's how it helps you. So awesome. Cool. Night Cow, what do you mean? I am the problem. I know it. I don't understand that. Hey, anybody else have any questions too? Go ahead and fire them off. I'm just going to do a little bit more of this bouncing ball. I'm going to do this in the graph editor. Sorry, it's early. I'm tired. Oops, what is happening here? Sometimes the Alt button doesn't work. Alright, so we're going to ease out of this top part. I'm going to use this so we can see. And we want to fast in with the linear tangent into the landing, right? And we probably want this faster. It'll land sooner. So it's going to hang in the air and then hit the ground hard and then bounce. Let's see here. It was at its peak over here. Translate Y. It was at 16. So like, let's go. We don't want to go up as high as 16. Let's just type in 15. And this is a linear tangent, so it bounces in. I want to break the tangents here. Break tangents so I can grab this handle, make it even more spiky, so it comes down and then bounces back up. So we got boing, and that bounces pretty. So we'll see how timing affects how it feels. It drops slow and then it bounces up fast, right? So I want to move with Anibot. You've got these nudge tools. You can grab this key, although Anibot's hasn't been working today. There we go. I think it's only going to work for a little bit. They've been having problems activating accounts. Nudge this guy over. See, so we're working on bouncing ball helps you with spacing and timing, right? So spacing is between these two keys here, 1 and 4. You see how it just slowly, you can see in the graph editor too, it's slowly it's slowing out. If you hear that word, it's slowing out of this pose. It's coming slowly out of this pose, and then it's fast into this pose, right? So boom, and then it's fast out of this pose, and then we want to slow in to this peak pose, right? And so if the peak pose is at 15, a slow in could be like, let's just say 14 for now. And then another 14 on the other side. Slow out, bounce. There we go. So then we play it. So you see that, how it slows out of the peak, bounces fast off the ground, right? And the best way to do that is to get into the graph editor and make this a linear tangent, break the tangent handles and make them sharper, right? And so really the translate Y is a great representation of the bouncing ball. If you get it looking right, it's going to look like a bouncing ball, because translate Y is the up and down, right? So, all right, let me look, see, are there any other questions yet? Me being scared to push out more, show work, connect with people. Yeah, don't be scared. Just do it. Starting Fiverr and adding more of what I need on LinkedIn to fight that. Cool. That's great. Yeah, I've never really done Fiverr before. I don't know much about it. But what I would caution against is, I mean, I've heard Fiverr is like, just like what it says, you do work for $5, right? Maybe you can charge more now. I don't know. It's been a long time since I looked at it. But don't sell yourself short. I mean, just because you want work, I would not work just for $5, you know. And I've usually said, hey, if you're starting out, I mean, you know, I know people don't share a lot about how much they make and stuff, but like when I started out, I mean, I started out making, I think it was $35 an hour, you know, and I hear some people saying they're just out of school and like, oh, I'll work for $20 an hour. Hey, we got a new follower. Awesome. Elvis, welcome. Just followed. High five. Here, let me get out of the bouncing ball so we can talk for a little bit. Yeah, so when I hear some people coming out of school and they're like, I'll work for $20 an hour, don't do that, you know, because now that's going to, if more and more people say they're going to work for $20 an hour, then that's going to be the price, right? Especially in games, they can afford to pay you more. So like I said, I think, you know, my first jobs, I was making $35 an hour, like right out of school. So, but also you have to be, your work has to look like $35 an hour, right? And then the sky's the limit after that. You know, you keep working, so that's like a junior rate, you know. And this was, and freelance, you have to work in. I mentioned this in the last Twitch, where you have to work in all the different factors of, if you're a freelancer, you got to buy your computer, you got to buy the software, you got to pay for health insurance, you got to factor in time off, you got to factor in self-employment tax. That's a lot, right? So you try to do all that and then pay your bills for $20 an hour. That's not going to happen, not at all. So don't do that, right? But yeah, in a lot of times when I was a freelancer, I would charge by the week. A weekly rate seemed to be better because like hourly rates, unless you're like on staff somewhere, hourly rates don't make a lot of sense with animation, because you will, let's say you're a faster animator than someone else. Well, now you're going to get paid less for doing this job because you can do it faster, right? And so you don't want to, like, if you're freelancing and you're working with a client, try to figure out how much time it'll take you to do. Maybe add a buffer in there, so you're not just, you know, working your tail off the whole time, and then come up with a weekly rate. So it's like, hey, by the end of the week, this is how much work I'm going to have done, and this is how much it costs. That way you can pace yourself throughout the week and figure out how many hours you want to work, you want to take a break, all that kind of stuff. A weekly rate works so much better. So I think when I was starting off, my weekly rate was $1,500 a week. And so, like I said, your quality needs to look that good to start off, to start at that price. But I think until your quality looks good enough to be paid $1,500 a week, you're probably not at the level where you should be to get a job, right? So hopefully that helps. And I know other people have different experiences. These are just my experiences. So you can ask around and ask other people. Maybe they charged more, maybe they charged less. But I would stay away from asking really any less than $30 an hour to start out in 3D animation. 2D animation is a little bit different. Like Toon Boom puppet cutout animation, I have a company that does that, and that doesn't usually pay as much, and it's for like TV stuff. It doesn't usually pay as much as 3D, and so you have to look at that too. It's like, wait, am I applying for a 2D animation job or 3D animation? 3D animation takes a lot more because you're working in 3 dimensions and in the graph editor and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not putting down 2D animation. It's just a lot of times they pay less for that. So, and video games has more money than TV and even films a lot of times, right? And so if you're applying for video game work, know your worth and ask to get paid that much. And now in California, you've seen all the job postings they're putting up that they have to put in a salary range of what they're expecting to pay for this position. So that helps you too, right? To try to figure out how much to ask for, because a lot of times they'll ask you, what is your pay expectation, right? And so after you've figured all that out, what do you need to survive, to pay for all the things I talked about, and keep your sanity, right? Mental health is important. So how much money do you need to do all that? And then you'll better know how to quote a price for someone, and you need to be confident in it. Don't just be like, well, maybe $30 an hour. Be confident in it. If you know for sure, hey, I can live off of this, then do it, right? Let me see what else we got here. So starting Fiverr and adding more of what I need on LinkedIn to fight that. Yep, that's awesome. We talked about that. Cool. Awesome. And then we got Elvis. Welcome. You guys said thanks for following. Really appreciate what you're doing here. Awesome. Thanks, Elvis. That's great. How do you learn your worth? That's a great question. King Cube Creator says, how do you learn your worth? So getting feedback, it's like, if you want to send stuff to me and ask me, I'd always be open to giving you some advice on that. That a lot of that stuff could be more private, so we're not having to say all this stuff out so everybody else can hear it. And when you're asking for feedback, be ready to hear some hard feedback. It's like, because you wouldn't want someone to lie to you and say, "Oh, it looks awesome." If it's not up to the level of getting paid what you want to be paid, then you want to ask someone that's going to be honest with you to tell you, "Hey, I think if you want to charge that much, you just need to you need to work on this," and then you're there. So that's a good way to know for sure. And then to build some confidence, if you have some people that you can reach out to, some friends, maybe some friends that are in the industry. I did that when I started off. I had some friends in the industry that were giving me hard, honest feedback that let me know, hey man, you're not ready, do this, do that. And I know it sucks when people say go back to the bouncing ball, but I mean, that's what people did to me, and it helped a lot, right? Because that's the best way to work out, like what I was showing you guys a little earlier. I was just doing a quick little bouncing ball. It helps with the learn spacing and timing for sure. And so if you can get that down, just a quick little exercise, of really working that out and then getting feedback like, hey, does this look right? Does this feel right? A lot of it's about feeling too, and training your eyes to see something and to feel something so that you know how to do it. The way I got more confidence as an animator was not, it's hard to say I'm a good animator. Like practically nobody says that, because, you know, Glenn Keane, as good as he is at animation, was never happy with where he was at, and that's good. Like if you're a good artist, you're never going to be happy. So it's hard to be confident as an animator, but you can be confident as a troubleshooter. And that's what I started to do, was like go, okay, you know, maybe I can't nail this the first time. I'm not the best animator, but I know if I start somewhere and I lay something out, you know, lay out some blocking, I know I'm good at troubleshooting. So now I'm good at going back and seeing what's the problem. Let me fix this. Let me tweak that. Let me fix this. Let me tweak that, until it starts to look and feel right. And those are the muscles you have to work on, right? Because if you can really get good as a troubleshooter, and then you're confident in yourself as a troubleshooter, then you'll be like, hey, you can almost animate anything, because it's not a formula that you learned. It's not like, oh, I put the ball at this place, and then I put the ball here, and then I put the ball there. It's not a formula. It's, I know I can start this, and it might look floaty and it might look crappy, but I'm confident that I can go into the graph editor or whatever, and I can go back, and now, because I have a starting point, the starting point doesn't have to look pretty at all. You know, so you just got to have something, like people used to say, just, you have a blank page, just put something down on the page, right? Just draw something, and then you can go from there. And so your blocking doesn't have to look pretty, just put it down, and then what you're confident in is your troubleshooting abilities. Now let me go back and see what's wrong. And so then you're just kind of whittling down as you watch it. You know, maybe play blast it and watch it, and maybe write your own notes, like, okay, and you're looking for what's wrong. So, all right, I need to change the spacing on that part. The timing is off here. You know, you write down your own notes, and then you go back into your shot, and now you're just running off of your own notes, and so you're training your eye that way as well. So yeah, hopefully that helps. But yeah, I guess the question was, how do you learn your worth? So that's what I would do, is just keep going and get feedback from people. And you want to be at a point where you can charge at least $30 an hour to start off. I would suggest $35. But then again, like I said, I would suggest charging a weekly rate. If you're a freelancer. But you know, I started off at $1,500 a week, which is pretty good money, right? And then, like I said, there's a lot of room to grow after that. So that's just starting out. But don't charge too little. Don't be so hungry for a job in animation that you charge too little, because then you're going to wear yourself out. You're not going to want to keep doing it. It's not enough to pay the bills. And this is not the type of job. It's hard work. It's not the type of job that you get paid little for, right? And so that's how you know your worth. It's like, this is hard stuff, you know. And then especially as you're learning, you're putting in so much hard work as you're learning, you know. And doctors get paid a lot because they went to school a lot, you know. It's like, you're learning animation's hard. I'm not saying it's like being a doctor, but it is hard work, and you need to go to school a lot for it yourself, and get some education from some teachers and stuff. And so there's so much work that goes into it, that's your worth. You're worth something, you know, and you're also worth your interpretation of something. Every person can put in something that's a little bit different. Your bouncing ball might look different than my bouncing ball, you know, and that's fine. You know, it's like if you give a line of dialogue to an animator, and they animate it, you know, you give a line of dialogue and a storyboard to an animator, and then you give it to another animator, you might get two different performances, right? But you need to learn, don't just give the generic performance. You need to learn, what is you? What is your interpretation of that line of dialogue and those storyboards, right? And you're trying to make the most entertaining shot, but you're also you have to keep it within the character, and you have to keep it within the story. So it's not just all of a sudden acts like Jim Carrey because he's entertaining or whatever. It's like not all flamboyant unless that's the character, right? If that's the character and that goes with the story, then you can do all that. So, but each animator has a different point of view, and so you also, as you're doing your exercises and your assignments for class, start to learn what is your point of view. What movies do you like? What characters do you like? And you can start to just work that out in your head as you're animating. And it's okay to emulate other actors. So maybe watch, hey, this scene reminds me of this movie. Okay, so go watch that movie, analyze that scene. Why do I like this actor in this scene, in this situation? Right? And then you can use that and apply it to your shot. So that's reference, right? So a lot of times people don't plan ahead before their shots. So if you want to really make your shot shine, take some time to plan, which is reference, looking like not just recording your own reference. I think a lot of times animators will just get a shot and they'll just, let me just act this out. Well, your animation can start to look the same if it's just you acting it out all the time. But if you, Michael Makarovich, he used to be at Pixar. He's an awesome teacher. Definitely look him up and his work. But man, he makes up all these, he makes this little slideshow for himself. All the time for his shots. So he's doing tons of research of watching other movies. He's huge into just, let me find all these scenes. And he mentioned a good place to look for quick scenes is, if you go to Giphy, you're just looking at those animated GIFs, however you say it. You look up a topic or a saying and stuff like that, and a whole bunch of animated GIFs will pop up, and you can see, that's from this movie. And then go look at that movie and find that scene. YouTube's a great resource. If you just look up, give me a scene where someone's crying or whatever, and then you could find a whole bunch like that. But do your research. Find things that you like. The Pixar movies were huge back when they first started, because those guys, they never made movies before, but their thing was, we're going to make movies that we like, instead of trying to please other people and trying to please a corporation. Like, let's make movies that we like. And so they found their own voice and what they like, which then translated to other people, and it's authentic and it's real. So definitely take the time when you get a shot to do your research, look things up, find out what you like, and put that into your performance. Hopefully that helps. Made my own short on YouTube, Night Cow. Awesome, cool. Yeah, definitely share that link, man. Let people see it. That'd be great. So hello, Alan. Alan is here. Good to see you. Hello. Sweet. Does anybody else have any other questions? King Cube Creator. I have no income at the moment. What is the best way to work around that? Well, yeah, definitely. If you can't get a job in animation, get a job somewhere. Work at Starbucks or wherever. It doesn't matter. If this is what you want to do, you got to pay the bills, right? And so, and I said this in the last Twitch, was my mindset was, this is either a hobby or a job, right? And so until it's a job, it's a hobby, and I'm just working at it. If you try to force it to be a job and you're not ready for it to be a job yet, that's not good, right? So maybe you get a job at Starbucks or whatever it is you need to pay bills to keep you going. Get that job. And then work on your animation on the side until you can get it to a point to where, maybe you get one freelance job, but you're going to do that freelance job while you're doing this other job. Guys, there's been times when I've had 2 full-time jobs and a freelance job all at the same time. It's like when I was first starting out, and I'm not saying work yourself to death, but you got to know your limits, right? And so maybe for a short period of time, I can sprint, right? And so for that short period of time, I've got a full-time job here. I'm going to take on another job here. I can do that in less time. They're going to pay me full-time, but I can do it in less time. So let me do that. And then I might have a little bit more energy to just take on another little job. Whatever it is, whatever your limit is, you need to know it, right? But then you need to be able to take a break. That's what I said before. Take a break, factor that in, because no one can sprint forever. The greatest runners, they need to take a break. They're not running all the time, right? And so, you see sprint races, they don't last very long, right? And in marathons, when people run marathons, they don't sprint the entire time, and they figure out the best times. They know their body. When can I sprint? How long can I sprint? How long of a break do I need? And they try to factor it in so that they can sprint right at the end, because you need to save enough energy to sprint right at the end across the finish line. So only you can know what your body needs, because you also have to figure out, like, for me and my body, I don't need a ton of sleep. That's just how I've always been, and maybe it's because I'm addicted to coffee. Speaking of which, my body doesn't need a ton of sleep. I'm 5 hours and I'm good, and so that's a blessing for me, because then a lot of times I get up a lot earlier than my family, and so that's when I get a lot of my work done. So early in the morning, everybody else is still sleeping, and I'm just getting a bunch of work done. And then weekends, again in the morning, everybody's still sleeping. A lot of times my family sleeps till noon on the weekends. I don't know how your family is, but so I'll have, like, if I get up early, if I get up at 4 in the morning, I can work for 8 hours, be done by 12, and then have the day with my family. So you just have to figure out what works for you. Other people might be night owls. I used to be a night owl, and now I'm more of a morning person. Is it a morning bird, early bird? But if you're a night owl, then everybody goes to bed. Maybe they go to bed at 10 o'clock or 11 or whatever, and then you stay up until 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And then you get a few hours of sleep, you go to work. Like I said, you can't do that forever. But when you're starting out, it's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of sprinting. And that's what I had to do to start off, was working multiple jobs trying to make it happen, right? And so don't force an animation job to start. Don't force it. Because I've seen some people try to do that, and then they don't like it, and then they're like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, and then they end up quitting and going to do something else. So don't force it. This needs to be fun. It needs to be something that you love and that you have to do, right? And so you don't want to ruin a good hobby. When I was a musician, I feel like I ruined music for myself, because I loved music, and then for 20 years I did it as a job, and now I never pick up my guitar, right? And so it's kind of sad, because I love music. I used to love music, and I used to love to play music and sing music. It was something I felt like I was good at, but I kind of overdid it with myself, and you don't want to do that, right? So don't do that with animation. It's good to have two different things. So, like, right now, I love that now animation's my job, but music's more of a hobby. So it's something I can turn to. I know I've found myself sometimes when I feel burnt out and I feel like I need a little pick-me-up, I can go over to the piano and just start playing some music on the piano, and I feel better. But yeah, whatever it is for you, I would say also find a hobby if it's not animation. I took up golf recently as well, a little over a year ago, and that was a good thing, because it had nothing to do with animation, it had nothing to do with music. So it's just another hobby of something where I'm learning something new. I'm applying my brain to something else for a while, so that when I come back to work, I've got lots of energy to animate. And troubleshooting and animating takes a lot out of you. So you really have to figure that out and be ready for that. So hopefully that helps. All right, Night Cow shared a link. Everybody check that out. A little short that Night Cow made. Apologies for my voice. No problem. No problem. Anybody have any other questions? We've got a little bit more time while I'm waiting. I can go back to working on this bouncing ball. So I was saying earlier, I ease out. So you hear ease out or slow out if you hear that phrase. What we're doing here, the ball is at its peak. When a ball is up at up in the air and it starts to come back down, gravity's grabbing it, right? And so you've heard an object in motion won't stop until a force is applied to it, right? So the force is gravity. So the object is going up, but gravity's pulling it down at the same time. So it's going to slow down almost to a stop and then start to fall as gravity takes control, right? And so whenever a ball is at its peak, it's going to slow into that peak pose, slow out of that pose, and then fast into the ground. And so if you see on the graph editor, that's what I have here. This is translate Y, which is up and down. And he slows out of the peak, and then you want him to go fast into the ground. So what I did on this was I made a linear tangent right here. So you do linear tangent, and then I grabbed these guys and I broke the tangent, which is right here. It usually starts off with a unified tangent. So like a unified tangent is where you move one of these and it moves the other side. And that's not what you want. You want to have individual control. So if you grab this key here in the graph editor, you can break the tangent, grab this handle, and now with a bouncing ball, you want it to be sharp as it hits the ground. Steep. So you want it to hit down and then bounce back up, right? And so let's play blast, or not play blast, just play that. So you see how that feels as it slows out and then slows out of the peak, fast in to the ground, fast out of the ground, and then then it slows into this peak again. So, boing, right? And so if we were going to hit the ground again, maybe, I don't know, frame 28. Like I said, don't be afraid to just try something. I might have the timing wrong. I won't know until I try it and then hit play. See, and then it hits the ground. And then maybe I want it to bounce up. Each time it's not going to go as high as the previous time, and it's going to be a little bit quicker as well. So this peak was, if you look in the channel box, this peak was at 15. So maybe this peak, let's try 13. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. And then we want to slow into that. So maybe right before 13, let's try, we do 12. Like I said, it's trial and error a lot. And so we see what that looks like. And that might... Here, let's just hit play. See, now that's too fast. And what I can tell is this is a timing issue, not a spacing issue, right? Spacing is, like here in Translate Y, the space is the distance it goes. So it's going from 1 to 12 over a few frames. Well, let's not think about time. The spacing is, it's going from 1 to 12. So now I know that's the distance I want it to go. But the timing is off because this happens too fast. So I can grab these 3 keys. Oops. These 3 keys. Use the nudge tool in Animbot, if you have Animbot, or you can just grab this middle part and drag it over. But I like to nudge 1 frame at a time. So let's bring it over maybe a couple frames and see. So let's see if that timing feels better. So you see how now all of a sudden it's not going as fast. I didn't change the spacing. I changed the timing. Right? Now if I didn't want to change the timing, but I wanted to change the spacing, I would have had to have made it bounce either in a shorter distance, because the amount of time something travels, or the distance something travels over an amount of time is the speed, right? So you have miles per hour. The distance something goes within a certain amount of time is the speed. So if you have something trying to go too far in a too short of a time, it's going fast. It's going like 100 miles an hour, right? But you want something to go 20 miles an hour. You want it to be slow. Okay, well, then if you need it to travel a far distance and you want it to go slow, you need more time, right? If you want to go a short distance, So that's why you kind of have to play around with spacing and timing and know the difference and know how to troubleshoot that in your shot. So like in this bouncing ball, you see that's what I'm doing. I just kind of start off arbitrary a little bit, like where I know, okay, I can put this at 16, put this at 1, kind of have a general idea, but then you mess around with the spacing and timing to get it to feel right. Now I feel like as I watch this, that second bounce, it's falling to even here. So let's look at that in the graph editor, and you see what this is? See how it's a curve down there? So it's slowing into this landing and then slowing out. But when a ball hits the ground, it hits it hard. So this is where we want to do the linear tangent to come right into it. And we're going to grab this. Oh, forgot to break the tangents. Grab this guy, make it sharper. Grab this guy, make it sharper. So now it's going to hit the ground harder on that second bounce. So you see that? Now all of a sudden it feels more like a bouncing ball. Right? And I might even take a frame out of this first bounce. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. There we go. That feels better. So you see how just the troubleshooting of looking at that going, does that speed feel right? Does this look like... And the only reason why you would know if it looks right or feels right is if you watch videos of bouncing balls, do some experiments yourself. The more you observe real life and what it looks like, the more you'll be able to notice a problem when you see it in animation. So you have to study real life and study other people's work. Maybe there's some animation that you really like. Study it. Why do I like this? What is it about it? And then you can apply that to your shot. Right? Sweet. Anybody else have any other questions? We've got about 14 minutes left. How do you implement moving holds and copied pairs? That's a good question. So moving holds, it's a tough thing to do in 3D animation without it looking too floaty, right? And so a lot of times what I'll do, somebody just finishes a motion, but they need to stay there a little bit longer. I might keep that motion going a little bit more. Or if I already had them, they moved into a pose and they came to a stop, maybe they'll slowly start to go back the other way and then come to another stop. So you have to try to see what feels right for the moment for a moving hold, and then try to work with that. Definitely in moving holds, you don't want everything to move at the same time. I mean, never do you really want everything to move at the same time. So offsetting will help too. So like maybe maybe the body just stayed still in a moving hold, but it's just the head that kind of moves a little bit or something. It's like try to figure something out. A lot of that is troubleshooting too. A lot of that is looking at reference. Maybe someone just moved into a pose. What are they doing as they're reacting to someone else? They don't have to stand still the entire time. They can kind of maybe do a weight shift or something. Maybe they're standing more on their right leg while they're listening, and at one point maybe there's something that catches their mind and they're thinking about it, and so then they go over to the other. Now their weight's over their left foot. Maybe they change their head angle a little bit. So you got to think about that kind of stuff. What's going on in the character's mind, and that'll help let you know what to do for a moving hold. Copied pairs is good to work with if you're blocking in spline. So if you're not blocking in stepped mode, copied pairs helps, because that way, you're doing pose to pose, and you don't want, since you're staying in spline, you don't want it to just like slowly interpolate to the next pose. So you can make pose A here, and then copy pose A to a little bit later, right before it's going to transition to pose B, right? And so that's a copied pair. So you have pose A here, you have pose A here, and then pose B is right here. So there's going to be a little transition to pose B. So it's just it's a way to block that kind of looks like stepped, but you're never in stepped mode. So not everybody uses that, but it is something to think about, maybe trying. So that's a great point to bring up. It's like when you're practicing, when you're doing your shots, always try something new. Unless you're working for a client, then that's the problem, is if you jump into a job too fast, maybe you didn't have enough time to try a bunch of different things. So as you're practicing and doing assignments and stuff, practice as much as you can, different workflows, different things. Like maybe you try copied pairs and you're like, man, I really love this. This makes sense to me. Then do it. There's no one right way to animate. It's just everybody is taking their way that makes sense to their brain to get to the same point. So find out which way works for you so that you can figure it out and get there as fast as you can, right? So hopefully that helps. What do we got here? You mentioned grading yourself on the 12 principles of animation, but some principles like staging or timing weren't as clear to grade. What should I grade those by? Well, timing, I showed you in the bouncing ball. You can very easily grade yourself on that. Like if you understand timing, timing in your in an acting shot would be, I remember at first I was not, when I was first doing acting shots, I felt like there had to be motion the whole time. And so I'd get to like what they call a golden pose, but I wouldn't stay there long enough for people to be able to take it in, right? It's like they'd get to that pose and then I'd move them somewhere else. And it's like, no. Figure out, and maybe this is why early stages, it doesn't have to look like the final product. You can maybe get something and just make it stop completely. Don't worry about a moving hold yet. Get to this pose, make it stop. Get to this pose, make it stop. Get to this pose, make it stop. And then you can go back and see, do I need to tweak that a little bit? But that'll also help you know your timing, because timing would be the transitions between poses, right? And so there's also rhythm involved with that. So you don't want everything to follow. It's like, hey, I got 10 frames to this pose, 10 frames to that pose, 10 frames. It gets too boring, right? And that's another thing Michael Makarovich does, is he measures energy of a shot. And so as he's watching it, he might be like, oh, this is high energy here. He kind of does a little graph. High energy here, oh, it's low energy here. That's high energy here, it's low energy here. If those peaks and valleys are exactly the same, that's kind of boring. Variation is what makes a shot interesting. So it's like, oh, this is high energy here, it's low energy here, it's medium energy here, right? And then, so he's measuring energy, but then you can also figure out the timing of it too. It's like, maybe it's a long period of time where it's high energy, and then it's a short period of time where it's low energy, and then it gets medium. So you mess around with all of that and try to figure out what's interesting and what tells the story, right? But if things like someone's shaking their head, and say you just copy and paste the exact same thing of them shaking their head the exact same way, that's more boring than if maybe one shake is quicker than another, or let's say a wave. You can tell if someone copied and pasted a wave and it's just going like this and it's the exact same thing over and over again, but what if it's, and there's like a little microwave and then another big one, and that's more interesting. So you can figure that out. Let's see, what do we got here? First time chat, aesthetic, derelict. Awesome. The drift is a huge issue. I also get a lot of feedback on poses that feel like they've still hit too hard of a stop. Yeah. Like I was saying early on, don't worry about that. When you get into the polish phase, that's when you need to worry about things hitting a wall, right? And so hitting a wall would be, like, let's say, a lot of times what I'll do when I'm polishing is I'll look at the cog of the character, which is the hips, and I'm looking at the up and down and the left and right, and so you can look at it in the graph editor and see if there's any flat lines. That's bad, right? And so, but you can also just look visually. If the up and down, if all of a sudden it stops and it's just sitting, maybe it moves down and just sits there for a while and it's like totally still, and maybe it didn't slow into that pose, then that's hitting a wall, right? Like hitting a wall is like an arrow is hitting a wall. It doesn't stop. Or the bouncing ball hits the floor. When the bouncing ball hits the floor, that's hitting a wall. Let's say it's just stuck there, right? That would look weird, right? So if something's hitting a wall, unless if it's an arrow, it's going to stay on the wall. But even then, it's going to jiggle, right? So it hits a wall, but then it still has some energy it needs to get rid of. But if a human hits a wall, they're going to bounce and fall, right? There's going to be something that happens there. Or a ball hits a wall, it's going to bounce off of it. So yeah, to look out for hitting walls, those are the things you need to look for. And a lot of times when I say I'm looking at the cog or the hips going up and down and left and right, you want to make sure they're not happening at the same time. So I don't know if I can show this. I've got a little bit of time. Let me get rid of this bouncing ball. So let's say over 20 frames, I want this ball to go down, but I also want it to go screen right. Right? Here, let me do the. Actually, let me copy and paste. So if I do, and let's make this a straight line. I'm going to copy and paste this exact same. So this is the amount that it's going down. I'm going to copy that to here. So now you see how that's a straight diagonal? Because it's moving exactly the same amount down as it is screen right. So it's going to be a straight diagonal. Now, how do we get an arc out of this? Well, if we hold on a second. I hear some talking. All right, I'm back. So what I was saying was, so because the up and down and the left and right are happening at the same time, it's a straight diagonal. If we want more of an arc, we have to take one of these curves and you can offset them a little bit, right? And so then it's starting to go down. Here, let's do this. Oops. Why isn't it letting me? There we go. So it's going to start to go down and then go over. We can drag this out a little bit more. And then we start to get more of an arc here. It's not turning out the way I wanted it to. But it's still a hard line there. You see how it hits a... So here's a wall. So it's hitting here and then it's going over, right? And then it's doing all of that. And so what we want to do is maybe we don't want to be linear on both of these. So now I'm going to auto tangent these guys. So then we're just troubleshooting. But you see how now that's more of a curve? And this is the exact same up and down data and left and right data. It's just offset. So if you ever hear anybody say offset your poses, this is something you do during polish, though. You don't do it during blocking. It'll mess you up. I mean, you can do it during blocking if you understand what's happening. But look, between translate Y, which is up and down, translate Z is left and right. There, it's the same thing, offset. And all I did was offset it by, I mean, how many frames is that? 6 frames? So from here to here, about 6 frames, 1 to 7. Right, and then you can play around with the offset. Let's say I just offsetted a few frames. So now that's less of an arc. You see that? So you can just mess around. But let's say instead of arcing down like this, I want it to start going right first and then come down. So I want it to be an over arc instead of an under arc. So then all you do is offset the other way. So now we take translate Y. Let's offset this guy. A few more frames. Set 7. So now it's going to be an over arc. You see that? and then you can mess around with the timing and the spacing to try to get, because it feels like it hits here, and then like maybe I want it to slow. Like maybe then you can start messing around with timing. You know, it's like grab handles, pull them, try to make it look better, however you want to do it, but you just mess around with it. So, but you see, just by offsetting, we can get more of an arc. This isn't a perfect arc, but it gets you closer, right? And then you just kind of go in and fine tune things. Hopefully that helps. You never heard of offsetting the moving whole? Fascinating. Cool. Good. Elvis said, as you mentioned earlier, timing and staging, getting the feeling to improving that by practicing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'll learn what looks good, what feels good, practicing and doing research, studying, looking at other things, stuff like that. Sherlum says, do you mind checking out a shot I blocked out? So that's what I said earlier. If you missed it, guys, if there's anything, and we're going to end on this, if there's anything you guys want me to look at, just private message me on one of the social medias and ask me to take a look at it. The best way to do that is to upload it to SyncSketch. So go to syncsketch.com. You can make your own login there and upload your shot, and then send me a link to that. That way I can do drawovers, I can frame by frame it, I can type in some notes, and that's just the easiest way for me to do it. And I mentioned before, there might be rare occasions where I'll ask to see your Maya file, because it might be easier to give you notes by doing a quick video and getting into the graph editor and showing you how to fix it, rather than writing out notes on SyncSketch. So I might say, hey, can I get your Maya file for this? And I'll just make a little Google Drive folder for you to upload it and all that. So, but I don't have a lot of time to do this for everybody. So that's why before I mentioned, if anybody wants to send me a bouncing ball, that's probably the easiest thing I can help you with quickly. Everything else is just kind of send it to me, and if I have time, I'll look at it. And it's okay to just kind of remind me, hey, if it's been a week or so, hey, just check in. Do you still have time to look at this shot? Just remind me, and then I'll let you know how things are going. Because a lot of times in my life, the work ebbs and flows, right? Right now, it's kind of slower, so I have a little bit more time. So now is a good time to send me stuff. In February, end of January, beginning of February, things are going to start to pick up. And so I might have a lot less time from, say, February till April. So, yeah, within this next month, send me stuff to look at, and I'll do my best to try to look at it. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for joining me again for a Q&A. I think I'll do another one coming up soon to talk about the facial animation. If you guys haven't seen my facial animation tutorials, well, they were more Twitch sessions, right? I did 3 facial animation Twitch sessions using Faceware Retargeter. And so if you want to go back and watch those, I think next week we'll talk about that. And we'll do a Q&A about facial animation and using Faceware. So if they have a free trial, a 30-day free trial if you ever want to check that out. But it's definitely something I would suggest if you're trying to get into animation, if you're trying to get into video game animation, if you know Faceware retargeting and you have that down on your resume and you can show an example of your work, that'll get you in faster because there's lots of video game places that need people to do facial animation, but a lot of people don't know how to use a tool like Faceware Retargeter before they get to a studio. So then a studio takes a lot of time to try to train people. So if you already know that, you're saving them time and money, right? And so they're going to hire you before someone else that they have to train. So especially if your work looks really good. So anyways, hope that helps. So I think next week we'll do a Q&A on facial animation, and maybe I'll just keep doing a demo on that and look at those videos, and then just let me know what you guys want to learn. If you guys want to send me questions ahead of time, that might be helpful too. So just send them to me on any of my social medias. Thanks for the applause. That's awesome. If you just want to send them to me, send your questions ahead of time. Maybe I won't answer on social media. I'll just say, hey, I'm going to save that for the Twitch session. That'd be good too. But anyways, thanks guys, and we'll see you next time.